Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a rainy Thursday. It's June the 12th. This is Let's Talk Tropics. We're going to get to the computer models in a little bit. Over the course of the week, we've been watching the GFS try to form something over Central America, western part of the Caribbean, even the southwestern part of the Gulf over toward the Bay of Campeche now for a number of days. And it's been pretty consistent. In the last couple of days, we've seen a little more consistency kind of focusing there near the Bay of Campeche or even the west coast of the Gulf there along the Mexican and southern Texas coasts. But we are seeing one other model and maybe two other models that are just starting to kind of slide in and maybe starting to bite on a forecast. So next week's weather could get interesting. Not saying that it will, but it could. And possibly as we get into that third week in June, as we've been talking about now for about a week and a half, that we might see our first system trying to develop. So we'll get to those models in just a little bit, but it's a rainy one here in Lafayette. Had some thunder earlier, but we've got light rain right now. Our temperature 82, but it feels more like 93. It's pretty nasty out there with those dew points at 79. That's about as high as it goes. You don't get dew points in the low 80s very often, but it does happen here in South Louisiana, but not too often. Humidity at 89%. Winds are currently out of the south at 9, and the pressure right now at 29.99. There are some wet roadways, particularly there at the I-10, I-49 and the Louisiana exit, and also toward Henderson. It looks like the roadway a little bit wet there. And we've got some showers there along the Ambassador Caffrey exit, and then even up toward Opelousas, we're seeing a little rain. I-49 up there toward Alexandria right now looks dry, at least from my vantage point here, but some showers and thunderstorms are going to work their way in. So let's go ahead and get to the radar real quick, just kind of show you what's going on in a large part of Evangeline and St. Landry Parish now covered with widely scattered showers and thunderstorms. And as I said in the forecast this morning, eastern half of Acadiana is going to see the pop-up thunderstorms, pop-up type of thunderstorms that we see during the summertime, while our western sections are going to see more organized rains. And this is kind of a disturbance that's been coming out of portions of Texas. It's a low pressure area that's out there, but the low is kind of pulling off toward the north. So I'm not exactly sure how much farther a lot of this organized rain is going to push eastward, but still going to keep those rain chances a bit there on the high side. And as we kind of look at the radar a little bit farther out, you can see how far those rains go over Texas, but most of the thunderstorms are now starting to push off the coast there between Houston and Corpus Christi. As I said, that's part of an upper low that's kind of got a bit of a surface feature and a frontal boundary drape from Texas into Louisiana, but at this point, it looks like the general track of this is going to kind of cruise in that direction, and that should eventually take some of the chances for showers and thunderstorms out of the way, but a little bit later on, we're probably going to be seeing the chances for those showers and thunderstorms, at least as we get into, let's say, going into portions of the weekend, we'll probably start to see some chances for showers and thunderstorms, perhaps a little bit less out there as we go through the next couple of days. Let's move that out of the way. Waters, we're seeing some gusty winds, especially along the Texas coast, and some showers and thunderstorms. So remember, the winds and seas are going to be a bit higher there. And as far as the next 7 days, the global tropics outlook is showing no chances for development here over the next 7 days, but I would be watching that area possibly to get some kind of a yellow or a 10% or a low end chance coming up here, maybe going into next week. So watch for that to highlight either over Central America or perhaps the Bay of Campeche. So right now there's nothing going on, and there's anything to worry about there. But we've got the thunderstorms that are going to go ahead and continue to move off toward the east. You got some showers there along the Mexican coast there, the Bay of Campeche, but the rest of the Gulf waters are looking fine. Still a lot of heavy rain kind of associated with an upper trough there near Central America, so they're getting some good downpours in Nicaragua, and those push over toward Honduras, and the rest of the action is kind of staying in the offshore waters there of the Panamanian coastline, but some of that's going to be drifting a little bit farther toward the west. Most of the Caribbean is fine right now. We've got a little bit of a tropical wave that's kind of moving about the central part of the tropical wave right about there, and that is moving off toward the west. And then out in the tropical Atlantic satellite, we've got 2 tropical waves that we're watching right now. one right about there, and one right about there. So, again, we've got a couple of tropical waves out there, but nothing looking interesting at this point. But I am concerned maybe about the tropical wave that's starting to move westward here across the Caribbean Sea. That might be what the models are trying to pick up on here, or perhaps the Central American gyres. We're going to try to send something from the Pacific side in this area, or it could be the combination of both that the models are starting to pick up on. And remember, the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook came out yesterday, the newer version, and it was still highlighting the Pacific side of Central America, but also highlighted the Bay of Campeche. So it might be seeing something that the models are seeing as well. So I do want to start with the GFS model because the GFS is the one that's been trying to develop something for the last several days. You see a little bit of a low there, kind of drifting across the Yucatan, and then eventually moving westward across the Bay of Campeche. So at this point, that appears to be that tropical wave that's kind of moving westward across the Caribbean Sea. Will that gain a low pressure area and move off toward the west? Only time will tell, but I do want to go back and look at some of the previous models just to give you an idea of some of the consistency we're seeing from model run to model run. Now, remember, the GFS is the only one that's really been consistent of putting a low pressure, a tropical depression, or maybe even a tropical storm somewhere near Central America here coming next week. So again, there's the latest model. That's the previous one for the same time frame, and you can still see a low there over the Western Gulf, southern part of the Gulf in the previous one, and now we're starting to look at some of the model runs from yesterday, and you still see a little bit of a low pressure area very consistently in the Bay of Campeche. It kind of comes and goes in those previous runs and kind of shifts a little bit down toward the Pacific. This is looking at let's say Tuesday's model runs for the same time period. So this is for next Thursday, a week from today. And you still see kind of a broad area of low pressure there, even as you go into the early or the latter part of this past weekend's model run. So again, there's a bit of consistency there with a low pressure area around Central America, and the GFS seems to be concentrating a little bit more on the Bay of Campeche, perhaps about a week from today. So the Euro model also is showing at least extra moisture and perhaps some pressure drops there over Central America as you get into the latter part of this run, especially as you go into next week. You see a lot of rain there over Central America, then maybe a little bit of a trough trying to develop there over the western part of the Bay of Campeche. The Canadian model, though, not only continues to keep the Pacific side pretty active, but it also shows a little bit of a trough or a low pressure area there over the southern part of the Bay of Campeche and then kind of working westward over toward the Rio Grande Valley. So not only do we have consistency in one model from model run to model run, but now we're starting to see a second global model trying to pick up on it. If we get all four of them to pick up on it, then we'll start biting, and then we'll most likely start to see those shadings of the Bay of Campeche for possible tropical development from the National Hurricane Center. As far as the Icon model, we are starting. Now, again, the Icon model doesn't go out quite as far. It only goes out 7 days rather than the 10 that I was showing you from the other three global models. But as you get out to days 6 and 7, you can still see a concentration of moisture there across Central America. But it looks like about a week from today, it's trying to develop a low over the Pacific side. But you might see a little brief moment at the very end of this loop. There's Saturday, there's Sunday, this is Monday. And then as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, you see a little low kind of develop there south of Brownsville along the Mexican coastline. So again, we might have 2 or possibly 3 models starting to come into agreement. Now, this is a very typical area for the month of June to see tropical systems develop. A lot of times they're old cold fronts that kind of swing off the Gulf Coast or the East Coast, and a low will develop and get some tropical characteristics that way. The other way is you get the Central American gyre that gets a little bit more active there over Central America, and it's kind of a broad low pressure area. And what you do is you get these little disturbances that kind of rotate around it, and if a couple of those can work their way over the Western Caribbean or get into the Yucatan Channel, they sometimes have a chance for some development. So models are showing an area that is probably the most likely region that you would see tropical development during the month of June. Water temperatures are plenty warm anywhere in that area, whether you're east of the Yucatan there in the western part of the Caribbean, or you're west of the Yucatan in the Bay of Campeche, those water temperatures are plenty warm to sustain tropical activity. And even though you've got some slightly below normal temperatures there on the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, those temperatures are still pretty warm, maybe some cooler right there along the coast, but it's pretty negligible there with those temperatures running in the upper 70s to near 80 degrees. Tropical cyclone heat potential, though, is pretty extreme there in the Yucatan Channel, so anything that gets into that area with good atmospheric conditions would have a chance. And you have lower heat potential there over the Bay of Campeche, but even with lower heat potential, if you get just the right atmospheric conditions, you can still see a significant tropical system trying to develop. Shear has been a big issue, though, and it usually is during the month of June and July. You usually start to see the wind shear relaxing more as you get into August and September, especially over the central and eastern Atlantic, which is part of the reason why you see more activity during the second half of the hurricane season. But the wind shear is quite strong here over the Bay of Campeche in the western part of the Gulf, and you got some decent wind shear there right now. Now, again, this is the map for right now. We'll have to look ahead and see if there's lower wind shear forecast for that particular area, especially as we get a week from today to see if anything's going to move into that region. Saharan dust has been a big problem out in the middle part of the Atlantic, but it seems to be easing up a little bit more over the Caribbean, southern part of the Gulf, and even into the Bay of Campeche. So there's still an inhibiting factor there with the dust in place, but at this point it doesn't look like it would be a huge factor when it came to the development of a tropical system. So the next week could be a little interesting. We might be talking about our first tropical system. Usually we have one or two during the month of June, and we're almost to the halfway point of the month. So we've been talking about models showing maybe the third week in June being a little more active. Next week is the third week in June. So we'll continue to watch those models and see if anything tries to get going here over the next couple of days. But remember, there's nothing out there now. So these are some of the things that you can do to be hurricane ready. Kind of look over the list of things. There's a lot of the items there that you probably already have, but you might need to top off some things or make sure you take those pictures of your IDs, insurance, and important papers and maybe keep those on your phone. But there's a lot of stuff that you can do to get ready now. I do have two other lists. One that would be a week before if a tropical storm or hurricane is kind of aiming toward Louisiana and we could be in the crosshairs within a week. I've got a whole separate list for that. And then I've got another list for just 72 hours. And usually by 72 hours, if a hurricane or a tropical storm is going to affect Acadiana, we pretty much know what it's going to do and relative about where it's going to make landfall. And that's about the time when a lot of your evacuations get called. So I also have another list of things that you can do within 72 hours. You can find those on my social media pages, but we'll go over those over the course of the year, especially as any tropical weather develops during the hurricane season. Well, I hope you enjoy this broadcast of Let's Talk Tropics. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And thanks to all of you who are watching this live here on this Thursday afternoon. You can also hear my forecast live on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And you can also follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who's so already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. If you hit that notification button, you'll know when I'm going live for Let's Talk Tropics, and you also get an alert when Acadiana Weather Today airs every weekday morning at 7 o'clock. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Hopefully we'll get a little, I don't know if you're one of those rumbling of thunders in the afternoon. I kind of dig that stuff. But if you're looking for some sunshine, hopefully you'll get the sunshine. If you want the rain, hopefully you get the rain, and we can make everybody happy across Acadiana weather-wise. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on Friday.